Hi, we are going to be working on learning the test taking strategy, and this is going to take a few lessons for us to learn the strategy. Today I'm going to just go over the steps of the strategy, and then actually tomorrow I will describe it and go through a test and just think out loud for you to hear how these different tips work. So today we're going to just be going through, like I said, all the steps to the strategy, and you already did your pre-test, so that was the first step actually to, if you wanted to make a commitment to learning this, and obviously you all have done that. So now we're at the next step of getting into things, and there are great research that goes with how this strategy can be successful. And so I'm going to go to the next slide here, which shows that. So let's say if you started out with 65% on that pre-test, so that's before mastery. That pre-test would be that score that's there. You can usually expect a 10% growth, if not more, and as far as research on how well you do after you learn this strategy and start applying these steps. So usually there's a 10%, which would be a 75% growth then when we get to that post-test that we will take at the end of this. So the first step is that you would prepare to succeed. And granted we're online, so usually you're not putting your name on papers, but if you were going to college, you probably are still going to be doing some paper and pencil tests. So make sure that you always put your name on anything that you're turning into a teacher, because they need to know who you are so that they can give you credit. And something you can do online is you can check to make sure that, I know we always have you do that with MCAs, check to make sure that it's your name that's showing when you log in. So that's one of the steps you could do to make sure that you're getting credit for the test in an online setting. The other thing that I think is very, very important, and I wish I would have learned long before I did, and I learned that somewhat from this strategy actually. When I was going to grad school, I had to take a major test that I needed to complete to be able to move into the field that I moved into at that point. And so one of the things I learned was that I need to say positive things to myself. So saying those affirmations like, I believe that I will do well on this test. I look forward to taking tests and using the test-taking strategy. I believe that when I use the test-taking strategy, I will be successful, are just examples. And it's just the fact that making sure that we believe and have a positive attitude going into that test. Another thing I found was just making sure I exercise before the test, making sure that I keep that routine that I normally have going when I have that the stress of a test coming up is another important thing. And then you can be saying positive comments to yourself while you're walking or doing whatever exercise you like to. So that is step one to prepare to succeed, and that's before the test, obviously. Step two is to step one is during the test, obviously, too. You're going to want to make sure you're continuing those. So step two is to inspect the instructions. Make sure that you read the instructions carefully. Some tests can have sections, and so then you're going to want to make sure that you are reading the directions that go with each of those so that you know what to do. And then underlining what you want to do and where to respond. Not as something that you probably can do as well in a online environment, but you can definitely do in a paper pencil test. And then notice special requirements. So always be looking to make sure that you know if there's anything special that you need to do for this test. And some of that can be just checking for the true or false answers. And we'll go into that a little bit later here. And then making sure that you take time to pause and make mental notes when you have any new instructions that come up. And then we're at the next step, which would be step three. Whoops, here's our underline. Sorry, underline what to do and where to respond. So if you are doing a paper pencil one, these are pretty easier to do that way. But still, if you're doing a computer test, you're going to want to make sure that you look at all four of the multiple choice options, which is the first bullet here. Circle the letter next to the most appropriate. So what you're going to want to do is read through them, and usually what most tests do is come up with 2 that could be a possible answer, and you can rule out 2 others, and then you're down to those last 2. So making sure that you process through anything that you know would be a wrong answer. For true and false, you can put a T in front of it or an F in front of it, so that if you know it's a true statement or a false statement, that can sometimes help with those true or false. You can put a positive sign in front of the true and a negative sign in front of the false, and sometimes this is just figuring out what works for you. So I'm just throwing out some ideas to help with those types of questions. Whoops. So step 3 is read, remember, and reduce. So remember to always read the whole question. You may get in the middle of it and then think, oh, I know this, and there may be more parts to it that went into that and more details that would have changed your answer. So always make sure that you read the whole question. Always remember what you studied, so you've prepared really well for this test. You know the material. Just always remember to be thinking back on what you studied and what your teacher may have told you already about this topic. And then remember to reduce the choices, which is what I was talking about with that multiple choice question. Make sure that you're reading everything and then deciding if there's some of them that can't be it, processing through those questions. Step 4 is to answer or abandon. So you either feel confident about answering that question and then you go for it, or if you don't feel confident about it, it's good to leave that question blank. You can write down that you haven't done it. I know on our online tests it's going to show up if you tried to submit it as you still have something to answer. So it's good to abandon the question, because sometimes there's going to be information in the test that can help you out with that question that you don't understand at that very moment. And we don't want to abandon it like we did this house here. We want to make sure we come back to it. So make sure that you come back to that question that you abandoned at that moment, and then go to that answer phase of it. And then we have step 5, which is turning back, and that just means that you make sure that you go back to any of those abandoned questions and answer them, and then make sure that you are looking back at any questions that maybe you were estimating on before too, if some information has came up that may help you answer those better. So then there's questions that you may have estimated on. If you're estimating, this is actually, these next 2 are going to be skills that you would use throughout. So you've already turned back and done all that. You would have used these before that. So there's going to be words that may be absolute words or non-absolute words, and I listed them here. So if you look there, you want to avoid absolutes. So absolute words are all, always, every, no, none, never, and only. So if you see those, most questions cannot be any of those answers, because they are something that has to be firm and has to happen like all the time or none of the time. Whereas the non-absolute words can happen, or the maybe type words. So examples of those are few, some, seldom, sometimes, most, many, often, and usually. And those words are going to be the ones that you would want to look for if you're in questions reading for specific words that go into that, because you want to avoid those absolute words that are the first list. You're going to want to choose the longest or most detailed choice sometimes in a question. Usually all those details, if you have a multiple choice example, there may be 3 that are shorter, and then there's a really long response. Usually that long one is it, because it has so many details in it. So that's something to be looking for as a strategy. And then eliminate the similar choices. I know in the pre-test we had one of them that said a foot and 12 inches, and that would be the same answer. So you would want to stay away from anything that would be a similar type answer. So that would mean that those 2 would have been ruled out, and you'd be down to the other 2. And then step 7 is to survey. Survey means that you want to ensure all questions are answered. So you're not going to want to make sure that all those abandoned ones have been done. And then this is always something that people I know sometimes want to switch answers. And usually your gut your first gut answer is usually the right one, and switching it is actually probably not the right thing to do. So switch an answer only if you are sure, absolutely positive that that first one that you went with is not it. And then this is just a review of all the steps. So if you look there, we have step 1, prepare to succeed. Step 2, inspect the instructions. Step 3, read, remember, reduce. Step 4, answer or abandon. And then step 5, turn back. Step 6, estimate. And then step 7, survey. And if you look there, they have the acronym of PIRATES. And so you're going to want to make sure that if you're in a test and you're thinking about your test taking strategy, you're going to want to remember, think PIRATES, and then that helps you remember the letters, the acronyms that go with each step. So what I'm going to do next here is send you out a link that goes for you to fill out about what we learned today, and then please answer that, and then this lesson for today for the test taking strategies is done. Good luck, everyone.